Thank you. All right, good evening, everyone. It is March 19th, 2026. It's just past 5:30, and we're going to open up the Town Council Zoning and Regulatory Committee. This meeting is being recorded and will be rebroadcast on the Town of Barnstable's Government Access Channel in accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 20. The chair must inquire whether anyone else is recording this meeting, and if so, please make their presence known. This meeting will be replayed via Xfinity Channel 8 or High Definition Channel 1072. It may also be accessed via the Government Access Channel Live Video on Demand archives on the Town of Barnstable website. Let's begin with the roll call, please.
Committee members, Councilor Crocker.
Here.
Councilor Clark.
Here.
Councilor Bloom.
Here.
Councilor Lutke.
Here.
Councilor Crowe.
Here.
Committee member Jake Dewey.
Here.
Committee member Steve Robichaud.
Here.
You have full quorum.
Thank you. All right, we'll get right into our agenda. We've just finished the roll call, and we have some topics for discussion. At our last meeting, which was our initial meeting, we voted for the chair, and we had a discussion from Jim Kupfer, Director of Planning for the Town of Barnstable. He gave us some potential areas that we could look at. He collected these from the staff, and we all looked at them, and independently, we submitted those to Jim. He collated them, and we're going to look at those today and see if we can come up with a first few. We have a cast of many and many that we will look at. This, I see a long duration for this committee, but to kick it off, we want to look at a few. So why don't we start, and then we'll entertain public comment after you have a chance to understand what we're looking at. It'll be more productive that way. So let's review the topics for the Zoning and Regulatory Committee. Jim, if you could take it from there, what you received from folks and where we stand.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. As Chairman Lutke mentioned, at the first meeting, you received the initial list of zoning amendments. That memo dated February 18th, just for everyone in the public's knowledge. That is all now posted online under the subcommittee's tab on the website, all the meeting materials there. And the February 18th memo began to list out all the different zoning amendments that staff has received in one form or another. And what I mean by that is all the different sources in which zoning can come from or zoning ideas can come from. So an example of that is the Zoning Board of Appeals and their interest in seeing the accessory structures ordinance amended due to constant applications of that and concerns of the current way in which our ordinance reads. Our local comprehensive plan had a number of zoning initiatives. One example of that is the West Main Street zoning. Obviously, Town Council has had a number of potential proposals before Council, either by petition or by state mandate or whatever, or however, and those were all added on to this list, and of course, including our more recent ad hoc committees for zoning and housing. And so we grabbed a number of those top priorities and add them to the list. Since that time, we discussed that. Obviously, this list isn't whole or comprehensive, so additional items could be brought forward. But we asked for this group to provide staff with their draft of list of priorities for consideration tonight. Again, tonight, as the chair mentioned, we can review these priorities. And really, I think the hope here is have this group, this committee, provide staff with direction on what kind of work product you want to see at the next meeting. So this, unfortunately, I know this is our meeting number 2, but tonight I don't think we're going to be able to get too deep into the weeds on a substance. It's more of, hey, we want to work on this priority. Please provide us with the beginnings of a draft for our consideration, or perhaps it's more work product for us to better understand the topic, perhaps. And so what you have before you, dated March 19th, that's in your package, is this list of priorities that was consolidated from the committee, that was provided to myself, I heard by and large from most everyone. And so I have added onto this document every single priority that was provided to me. However, the top 7, or page 1, or the first 2 pages, you'll see top priority zoning amendments. So these were the ones that were repetitive. So provided by more than one subcommittee member thought that these were priorities. So perhaps I can go through those top 7 just very quickly for your guys' understanding, for the public's understanding. And then perhaps I can give it back and we can have some discussion about those priorities and where we would like to head.
Jim, for the
Yes.
benefit of the public, can you post those on the screen so that as you're reading them, the people can see them?
Yes, I could pull those up. They are also online, but let's see if David, if I can minimize the Zoom. I don't want to mess up his Zoom and kick off Jake. But if Dave is okay with adding that up to the screen, we can do that. Yep, there we are. Excellent. All right, just 1 second. Yeah, right.
Jim, while you're getting set up, I'd like to take public comment out of order. In fact, we'll just open up public comment. We have an individual with some young children. So if you'd like to come forward, sir, we could hear your public comment. Thank you.
Hi, Chris Gregory, Centerville. I want to thank you for 2 things before I start my comment. One, that we're in this room instead of the side room. Because I brought my kids, I was wondering if there was even a place in that room that I could put them where they wouldn't be on camera, because all the videos go up on YouTube, and that is unfortunately a consideration we have to have nowadays. And also that this is probably the best worst option for being able to attend one of these. But I wanted to come and talk to you even before you made your priorities, because I want to just ask that you all are as diligent as possible once you've set your priorities in defining the actual problem at hand with any of these things, not just in a way of public comment, but in data and evidence-backed methods, and that you're isolating the actual negative externalities that people are facing with some of these things. With home residencies, I don't necessarily care if I can see my neighbor's trucks, but if they're making noise or creating sound early in the morning or late at night, that is a problem that I think should be addressed. And also, not all of these issues are zoning shaped nails that you can hit with a zoning shaped hammer. And maybe there's other ways that you can come at it instead of squeezing it into that narrow box. And I think that we've encountered that with home occupancy, with short-term rentals, with a number of these things on this list. So I really hope that you'll take advantage of the fact that this isn't an ad hoc committee to really go as in-depth as possible in these different topics that you're going to deal with, and to try and bring a full understanding to the public, because I think that they all deserve that. So I thank you all for your work on this, and I'm going to go give them the burger that I promised them to get them to come here. So thank you, everybody.
Can you state your name again? Sorry.
Chris Gregory.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Chris. That's really a nice statement to kind of set us off at our kind of first meeting where we're actually talking about priorities. So that's always a good way to focus. Thank you. All right, well, now we'll go back to Jim. Well, we're going to hold, we took him because of his young children. We're going to hold the rest of it, so you can see a little bit of what we're talking about. Thank you.
All right, so we now have up on the screen page one, or part of page one. So these are the first priorities. So I will stress, top 7 here, not in any particular order, though. I did try numbers so we can refer back to number 1, number 2, et cetera. But again, this is really for the first blush for your opportunity to weigh in, to discuss what our work agenda is essentially going to be. And to the public speaker's first point, this is going to be a process. This isn't a sexy committee. This is going to be a lot of work. And so we are, this is going to set the tone for process moving forward. And so realistically, we're probably talking a couple of these items to work on at a time. So maybe being mindful of that as we're working through this. I'm just going to wait on Dave so I don't mess him up. All right. No. Okay. All right. I think Dave's done. Yep. All right. So number 1, explore amendments to Town Council's commercial vehicle ordinance. Many of you are probably very familiar with this. The commercial vehicle ordinance, and this kind of ties with the second one. The commercial vehicle ordinance was discussed for some time at Town Council. It was requested to be worked on through the Quality of Life group, which is the town manager's working group for certain amendments that were of concern. This one has some work product already started, in that, that working group established a draft, moved it forward to the planning board, and the planning board had a number of public hearings, had a lot of great public discussion. So that's certainly something we can build off of. But that ultimately was not recommended, went back to Town Council, and withdrawn in order for it to come to this committee to work on it further, engage the public, and eventually come back perhaps at a later date if recommended. So that is priority number 1 that was mentioned by multiple subcommittee members. Same thing with home occupation, essentially the exact same process. Comes out of the Quality of Life group, raised concerns from the residents. It moved to the planning board, where they held a number of public hearings, and there were some concerns about the draft home occupation ordinance. Again, a lot of good comments that came out of that hearing, and certainly a good place to start. So that was number 2, again, mentioned by multiple committee members. Another one, and this actually comes out of the Zoning Board of Appeals and kind of repetitive petitions, I guess, that of signage that might be out of date in our ordinance, or doesn't reflect what the true priorities are. And so comprehensive look at signage across the board. Signage is no different than really any other kind of development concern, or roadway concern, or sidewalk concern. It likely has an amendment that would look very different in Hyannis than that of West Barnstable. So that could be a pretty heavy lift, but certainly is a needed lift, in that our signage ordinance is woefully out of date. The next one, said by multiple members, was short-term rental ordinance. I know the town took a stab at this some time ago, and a number of other communities on the Cape are also taking a stab at it. Multiple committee members here suggested that we begin to look at creating that short-term rental ordinance. So that's certainly something we could prioritize and work towards. On the next page, number 5, explore amendments to downtown Hyannis zoning districts. While that might sound repetitive, it actually is building off of that previous, or it's not quite ended process, but soon to hopefully have a conclusion before the town council. And what I mean by all of that is, it's been about 2 years of working towards improving the downtown Hyannis zoning. And, methodically, the town council has worked towards making some amendments. Out of that process has come some other potential amendments. And so we could put forward a number of recommendations to kind of clean up that process and finalize some of the suggested changes. For instance, the building height discussion just last week, the adoption of the new height definition pertains to 6 out of the 7 zoning districts. I'm not doing that. 6 out of the 7 zoning districts and excludes the downtown neighborhood because of just how the process was established and how the public hearing notices wrote. So to give proper notice and procedure, the downtown neighborhood could be cleaned up to incorporate that new building definition. So cleanup items like that came out through, I think, a pretty solid process could be, initiated here and moved forward rather quickly. Number 6, create an accessory structures ordinance. So this comes from the Zoning Board of Appeals. And again, for these ones, I'm sure Jake could add to. So here is somewhat similar to signage, where we have an ordinance that might conflict with the neighborhood, conflict with kind of practical development patterns, and the zoning board is seeing repetitive petitions where they're having a difficult time meeting the letter of the ordinance, but in realities or in the practical terms might not be overly impactful. So how do we right size those accessory structure ordinances to meet the current standards today? And then lastly, number 7, this comes out of the local comprehensive plan, amend the town zoning to light commercial along West Main Street. So that was identified by multiple parties, though, that this could be a priority for this group to work on. That's certainly something that we could tackle. And so those were the top 7 priorities that came out of the group. Obviously, pages 3 and 4 are all additional ones. So a couple that I wanted to just quickly highlight that maybe this committee doesn't work on immediately, but we're kind of working in the background on, and that is like strengthening the inclusionary affordable housing ordinance. So what that is certainly something that I've heard over and over again. We want to tackle. That came out of the local comprehensive plan, town council, and just as a reminder, staff heard that request, and we sought and we received a state grant to get an economist on board to better understand performance and what would be an appropriate increase in that percentage of affordable housing. So we received that grant. We actually just completed procurement and by just, I mean 2 days ago, completed procurement of that economist and that team. And so my thought there is, while that might not be a priority that we work on immediately, once we have good work product, maybe I can work with the chair to get that on a future agenda. We can have a discussion about the data that we're seeing and what we're hearing from our consultant, and this group might be able to kind of shepherd that process along. Similarly with seasonal communities, right now, my opinion is it's a bit premature to seek designation as we're kind of working through. While it is final regulations, I think there are some problematic issues with those regulations, and some of my peers in other communities have agreed with that. So I certainly, when town council requests, I'll certainly give an update at their meetings, and then ultimately if town council wishes to seek that designation, my thought is then I would bring both of those zoning requirements to this group to help shepherd that process along. And then there's a number of other ones that we could work on over time, but this is the priority that we've received to date from this group. And so I'm happy to answer any questions about specifics, or if we want to hand it back to the group to talk about what they think those top priorities are.
Yeah, I thank you, Jim. That was a good review. And, I'd like to hear from anybody who doesn't think we should just work with the 7. We had a process established. Everybody sent in. The 7, I think, are fine to work within. Everybody agree with that? Can I just see hands or heads or something here? Yes, Jake is looking
Yeah.
okay, too. Okay, why don't we work among the 7? And in this committee, I'd like everybody to speak. I'd just like to call on folks, and I'm going to start over here with Steve at the end, especially since we've got the 2 that went before the planning board.
Sure.
So can we hear from you,
That'd be
Steve?
great.
Your opinions. What I'd like to hear from everybody is, I think 7 is too many to deal with at one time. What do you think of these? How many do you think we can handle? And what do you see us doing going forward?
Well, thank you for the floor. I appreciate it. And great intro by Jim. Great work on this. Definitely agree with the 7 that we see here. I wanted to just give a couple comments on kind of our process before I get into the priorities and just reiterate a few of the things that I've said prior. One of the things for me is I thought that Mr. Gregory's comments were excellent. He's been to the planning board before, and he clearly has some experience and knowledge in this realm, and really appreciated that. One of the things that he said that I really love is to focus on defining what the problem is, where the pain points are before we get into solutions. Obviously identifying, are there pain points and is it worth making a change? From there, focusing on, data-driven, evidence-based observations related to what those problems are. I've said this to Jim and staff before. I think it's always good to look at what other towns are doing when it comes to these issues. A lot of towns have tackled these problems before us, and obviously no town is the same, but there's certainly much that can be learned there, and not just on the Cape. Jim, looking at, the state and even the country to find case studies out there that we can learn from. R&D, rob and duplicate. That's what my dad would call it, so I think that's a good way to do it. Is there state guidance? Is there federal guidance? Are there consultants out there? Who can we lean on? We're the experts, and just focus on that. Madam Chair, I think you mentioned that this is where the hard work needs to be done, and that this is going to be a big lift. I agree completely. I think that we should try to be comprehensive in what we do, so when we turn it over to the planning board and any other boards, town council, those entities don't say, oh boy, there's a lot of work that still needs to be done here. Trying to do the hard work here, so when it's handed off, we can say, we've covered everything, looked under every rock, and really dealt with all the hard issues. In my opinion, I think 2 to 4 projects is probably the right mix to tackle at once. I think that the process should be that we discuss it, have an open initial discussion, talk about, identify what the problems are, hear from the public, and then set staff on a path of research, planning, and coming up with kind of some initial staff reports, drafts, documents for us to work off of. Jim is probably going to come back and say, I need 2 months or I need 3 months for this one, and for that reason, we should have a few in the hopper that we're working on where we say, okay, they're going to work on Hallmark, we're going to get to that in 2 meetings, so next meeting, let's dive into the next one. So that's why I feel like 2 to 4 is probably the right mix, in my opinion. And then the last thing I'll mention is just making sure that staff is kind of focusing on, okay, what's the history of the zoning in that area? I always love to hear the story. How did it start out? How did we get here? What were the conditions that led us to this point? What were the conditions under which our predecessors made those decisions? We should understand what led to our predecessors making those decisions, why the existing zoning was put in place, the economic conditions that were relevant at that time and are relevant now, any historical considerations, the cultural or community impacts, public comment, of course, and then the stakeholders. I say to staff all the time, please try not to give us, a 40-page document that's all words. Let's get some diagrams, let's get some flow charts, let's get some timelines, some photos. That doesn't just make it more digestible for us, it makes it more digestible for the public. And I think that it makes it easier for people to work through. All of our activities should tie into town council's strategic plan. I think we always need to be cognizant of that. And lastly, just the marketing and outreach is really important. One thing, to think about is, of all the individuals that wrote into the planning board and the town council on these items in the past, let's get an email back to them, letting them know what's going on. And Jim, just dial up that marketing, email marketing, social media. I think the town does a great job of it, but we need to lean into every possible avenue we have. I don't want somebody to come before any town committee and say, why didn't you tell me about this? That crushes me when I hear that, and I know it hurts any town councilor and anybody else because it feels like we failed. You know what I mean? So let's just focus on marketing so everyone's involved. All public, all stakeholders are involved from the start, and they don't feel left out. For me, I would start with the two big ones. I would start with the home occ and commercial vehicles because there's a mandate from town council. The public was very engaged with that on both sides, so that I think it's important to the public. So that's where I would start. If I would look at a third, I think it would be the zoning districts, that number 3, review of the town's zoning districts related to signage. I think that would be a really good one to get consistency across all areas of the town. So those would be my 3 to start out with. And sorry for talking for so long.
Okay, thank you, Steve. John, same thing?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I happen to go along with most of what Steve said, and I'd like to see us roll some of these things out, and we're not holding back anything. Once we're finished with them, we send them right on so they can stagger towards the planning board and the council, so we get those off the table. And I don't disagree with the first 4. I think all of them are something we need to do, and I would like to make short-term rentals something that's also it's a long-standing burr in the side of a lot of people, and I'd like to see that handled as now seems to be more of a consensus, both town-wide and statewide, that there's really a problem with our housing. So I'd like to see that also included. And as for how many we can handle at one time, I have a feeling it's maybe 2 or 3 is the right to start off with, and then move those off the table and move to the next ones.
Okay, thank you, John. I'd like to go to Jake online.
So I sort of agree with both other members. I mean, one question would be sort of to Jim in terms of what his staff, what they can take on at a time. But I think 1 and 2 kind of go together. Again, they were referred to from council, so I think it makes sense that we maybe tackle those first. And plus, it's sort of the box has been opened on that. Some public's been involved and discussion's been had. So I think we could pick that one up. Again, from the zoning board side, signage is a big thing for us. That just right now there's an applicant trying to sort out a Dunkin' Donuts sign going to Dunkin', and they've been going round and round with it. So there's things like that just need to be kind of cleaned up to match our development patterns and what we want our commercial corridors to look like. So I think that one would also be important. And then I'll push again on the accessory structures. For whatever reason, everyone on Cape Cod wants a pool now on a small lot. So we're constantly getting these pool requests, which are considered accessory structures. So we would love to have some guidance on that as to, again, what we want our community to look like in terms of if we want to have pools in the backyard of every house, especially when people start to get town sewer, and that would potentially open up land in their backyard or front yard that they could turn that hole into a pool. So those are my sort of 3 or 4.
Okay, thank you, Jake. We'll move on to Chris.
Thank you very much, Councilor Lutke. I agree. I think that Jim teed them up pretty well. 1, 2, 3 is good for me. I do agree with Mr. Dewey about that we have some traction with number 1 and 2 having been addressed by not only planning but also the town council. But I do think hearing what Mr. Gregory said and to use Steve's line, the pain points, perhaps we need to hear from Assistant Manager Clyburn on what the pain points are. What you had referred to is how did this emerge as a concern, and where is the noise coming from? Where are the complaints in a part of town, or what are the conditions that have triggered the calls for addressing this? So I do think that maybe referring to the history of how this came on our plate would be helpful. And maybe we also need to hear from the Zoning Board of Appeals. Mr. Dewey referred to these reoccurring problems. So what's the deal for me and for those who haven't had the experience he has at the ZBA? What are the reoccurring triggers that have caused concern that need to be so-called fixed or addressed? So I think we need to hear that history and be able to say, okay, this is where the pain points are, and how do we take the pain away? Thank you.
Okay, Will, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One thing before we get started, and I want the community and this subcommittee to know that I may have to recuse myself from the number 2 top priority zoning amendment, which obviously is the home occupancy ordinance. I may have to recuse myself from that one. More to come on with regard to that. As far as the zoning amendments are concerned, 2 things come to my mind immediately. I would like to go through, first of all, I'd like to go through all 7 of the ones that Jim has kind of ranked for us. So I'd like to go through all of those, because I think those are very much on the minds of the residents in this town. Ones that I have been talked to when people talk to me about them. These check all the boxes, if you will. And secondly, with regard to these 7, I would like to also just bring up the idea of maintaining our relevance. And by that, Madam Chair, you said that you look at this as going to be a long-term committee. I couldn't agree more. We also need to keep this committee relevant and in the minds of the public. I don't think that will be a problem, but I do think we also need to keep this committee public, relevant with the mind of the town council. So with that, I would say I would like to, once we finish with one of these top 7, so to speak, we move it along to where it needs to go. If it needs to go to the council for review and a vote, or it needs to go back to the planning board, or it needs to go back to the zoning board. I think we should move, once we are finished with one of these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or how many we decide we are going to do, that we move it on, because that keeps us in the minds of the public, and it also keeps us in the mind of the full council. So that's what I would like to see. Basically, that we, number 1, that we continue to go through all 7 of these top ones, because again, I think they're uppermost in the minds of a lot of members of the council and the general public. And number 2, that once we are finished with one of them, that we move it along to wherever it needs to go.
And just to clarify, Will, you want to go through all 7 today?
Oh, no.
Are you happy with, I think, with the consensus so far? Not that we've reached consensus, that the 1, 2, and 3 might be something we could start with? Or you want to have a further discussion?
I think we should discuss it until everyone is satisfied that we have not, hashed it out.
All right. Okay, thank you. Charlie?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thanks, Jim, again, for your great work here. It came to mind when I was prioritizing these things that 1 and 2, I'd like to have some sort of discussion, if only to clear in my mind the differentiation between the two of them. For instance, I'm thinking if there is a home occupation that includes vehicles of a commercial nature, maybe we should explore two before we address one. So I don't understand it, but Jim, you and Steve probably have a better idea what these two. Should we consider that, or can we just go right ahead and do both of them at the same time?
I can add a quick comment, Madam Chair, if you don't mind. And Jim, I'm sure would want to weigh in. But what we found as we started working through them was logistically it made a lot of sense to open both and kind of have a discussion of both because they're so tightly linked. I mean, they're just one and the same almost in so many different ways. Jim, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. I think you would probably want to tackle both of them concurrently. The commercial vehicle ordinance was established in an attempt to remedy not only commercial vehicles in residential neighborhoods, but get in line with the requirements that were in the home occupation ordinance. So there is some synergy there. So it would probably be best if those two move forward. So if this committee wanted to move those two as one of the, or some of the top priorities, we certainly can have Brian Florence in to discuss what the background to it. I could certainly speak to it. The assistant town manager, I'm sure, could as well. And we could also provide you with a lot of the good discussion points that already came out of planning board and so forth.
Thank you. Appreciate that advice.
Okay, and what I'd like to do, I know we have members of the public. Hilda, you were rising earlier. Do any of the members of the public have some comments to add to this discussion before we go further into it? Hilda, you want to come on?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening to the public. I am here. I would like some Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Hilda Hay. I have some concern concerning the commercial vehicle parking. What is it that we're trying to fix? What are the complaints that we're trying to fix? And also, we are encouraging people, small businesses, for example, we are encouraging small businesses, and I would like to know, so if somebody has a small business and for some reason has to take one of their commercial vehicle home, if they don't have enough parking space at wherever their location is, or for some reason they are moving goods from one destination to another, will this affect their business, or what is it? I just don't understand. What is it that we're really fixing? So you can help me to understand that also. Is it just because of beautification? Because a big truck, or if a commercial truck is parked here, it's not going to look beautiful beside me, or is it noise? What is it that we're really trying to fix? And if it is noise, is there a way to set a time frame in the morning to a time frame in the evening, like it's from 9 to 5, you can't make any loud noise, can't make any banging, stuff like that. So I would just like to get better understanding of that. Also, on the short-term rentals also, I know I had a meeting this evening also, and we were talking about short-term rentals, how to fix this issue, the issue of housing, which there are so many different groups that are working on it. And I think, and everybody is trying to do their best, but everybody is out there. Are we able to meet under a smaller umbrella with all these different groups who are trying to build and to advocate for housing and see how we move forward in solving the issues? Because I think every different group, HAC, the different housing planning, everybody come with something, but nothing is concrete. Nothing is really moving forward in the town of Barnstable, and I find it like really hard. So much controversy, nobody wants housing, yet we complain. I mean, for a long time, I've seen a lot of housing now out there. There are more vacancies, but people still can't afford it. It's not even a matter of not having housing. I see since the last year of 100 and something housing on the market, and I would drive around, I can see vacancies on different apartments or different properties. People are just not able to move in because they cannot afford it. So what I see as part of the problem is not even not having enough housing, but are we able to build enough housing to take the price of housing back down? Or is there a way for us as a town to come together and figure out a way how we're going to deal with the housing? Are we going to use town properties to kind of fill some of the gap, to cut back on the expenses? Just putting that out there and see how we can all work together in this town of Barnstable to get there's a percentage of us that works off Cape. There's a lot of people have moved away because they can't afford. They moved over the bridge, the congestion on the road. That's not the real deal. I think just the real deal is be able to afford what is here. Because there are openings, there are vacancies here, but people just can't afford it. The $16 an hour, $20 an hour is not able to pay those $2,500 for a 2-bedroom house or $3,000 for a 3-bedroom house. Thank you very much, and thanks for all the hard work.
Anybody else? Yeah, when you come up, just state your name for the record, please.
Larry Moran from Katuitt. I jotted down a lot of notes, and what I may do is just type them up and turn them into you, Betty, just so you've got it. I came up on the very first page of this with common denominators. I started writing where. In other words, where are the commercial vehicles? Where are the home occupations? I think that it would be to your advice and make it uniform to identify some definition of it. And I think that that's something Steve's already made reference to, but I think if you can do that, that was going to help, because that helps you decide which one of these particular ones you want to focus on. The next thing I came under, what is the issue? For instance, what is the issue with short-term rentals? I don't know. I bet with 5 or 6 of you are going to come up with 10 different reasons. So you may want to try to come up with something that's consistent. Another thing that occurs to me is that there's reasons for coming up with common denominators. Common denominators, by that I mean you're coming up with things that enable you to compress or compact some of these things. In other words, for instance, the talk about saying that commercial and home occupation is so close together, but they really they're two distinct things. But as anything that become compacted, that I think would make it easier for you to do what Will suggested. Come through, try to come up with something that you can live with and go forward, realizing that in all likelihood you're going to come back and look at it again, which is, I think, what's going to make you feel comfortable. I also took it upon myself to come up with items 8, 9, and 10, but I did that because they were different matters. First one is my number 8, which doesn't need to be yours. Residential development, and I immediately thought about the Great Marsh Project, where there's density, parking, water, sewer, septic, all of those are issues. Are those issues that you need to be considering? Residential development can pop up under number 3. It can pop up right there. But more importantly, what are the particular facts that you want to be considering? My number 9, for what it's worth, is the ability to apply to every this is my pet peeve, setbacks and sidewalks, S&S, it's pretty easy. But I'd like to see those put in every single one, and then you can decide if you're going to qualify them or delete them. But to me, that's the most important thing. And the classic example is what we would have called the Cascade over here. Look what we've got over there. And look what's going on if you go up Barnstable Road right up here, all the new buildings that are there, how close they are. Look at the one down just below Pleasant Hill that's right on the edge of Stevens Street. You can't even get into the place. And then when the water hits, it floods underneath it. So these are the kind of things that should be universally thought, even with respect to commercial vehicles. What's the impact of that with the setback, sidewalks, all of that? So it doesn't mean you keep it, but it means you think about it. Another point that I made was, who's going to draft these regulations? You really need to find a lawyer or a law firm that is skilled in drafting regulations of this sort. I happen to have done it years ago, but I'm not throwing myself in there. But the important thing is that you need somebody that's going to do it right from the bat, right from the start, hitting the main points. I think the two last pages, the additional zoning, are additions to the first 7 that you've come up with. But I think that's good. You'll be able to do it. And the final point that I had tied back in with the comprehensive wastewater this past week, which was an amazing session. It took 1 hour for Z. Crocker and Scott Horsley to make their pitch. It took another 90 minutes for the public comments to be made. That's the content that you had. And in the process of doing it, you're going back and forth saying, we're going to throw it back to planning board, or we're going to go this. I think planning board's already had their touch on it. I think other boards have had. I think that you should take it upon yourself that you are the ones that are going to be winding it up and being in charge, unless you decide you don't want to be there. Because if you do that, then you're the one that's assuming the responsibility. You're also looking into what things need to be covered. And if you find it's missing, okay, correct yourself or have somebody else do it for you. So I hope that those comments are worth something to you, and I'll type them up so you can look at them. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. Bob Schulte from Centerville. My first comment, you guys have your work cut out for you. I would just want to comment on a couple of things. I don't disagree with any of the priorities and things that you've discussed before. I would suggest, though, one of the items that Jim has identified as item 5. I've had several conversations with Jim and others since we've gone through this several items with the town council. And I think a couple of things that are really more of a cleanup item, Jim and I have talked about these. One of those would be the determination of the measurement of building heights and the actual heights for the downtown neighborhood. Because of the timing, and those weren't on the original item, they have to be determined by the town council. And I think those are something that you could do pretty quickly. There's been a lot of conversation about that, particularly now that, the council has set 44 and 40 for the downtown Main Street and downtown Village. I think you need to set that downtown neighborhood. There were some conversations. I know Mr. Robichaud, the planning board, recommended 42 initially in their memo. I had several conversations at the planning board with Mr. Teague, and we talked about 35 feet for the downtown neighborhood and the 2.5. So that's going to be something you'll have to decide. But I think given you agreed with the idea of tapering those heights as you go away from Main Street, I don't think it would make sense to go back up in the downtown neighborhood. So I think, as Jim said, you really need to set that measurement for building heights so it is actually in the code for all of the districts. Downtown neighborhood's the only one that doesn't have that now, and then you'll have to determine what that height is, whether it's 35 or somewhere between 35 and 42 will be your decision. So I think that's a cleanup item. I think you could tackle fairly quickly and get that off your list, send it to the council and be done with it. Setbacks were another thing that unfortunately is part of the ad hoc. We never got to setbacks, and I think that was something that I heard time and again through the conversations with the council. Several people actually saying they were almost more concerned with setbacks than they were the heights of the buildings. And as Mr. Robichaud said, and I agree with him, pictures tell 1,000 words, and you all saw this from my presentation to the town council. You can see what a difference the setback on 209 makes to 201. So establishing some sort of setback for the downtown Main Street district in particular is something I think needs to be discussed. What that is, I'm not going to make any recommendations, but I think it's an important issue. Again, so I think item 5 is one that you could tackle pretty quickly and get those taken care of. Other than that, I agree with the other priorities on that list of 7. I think short-term regulation is something that needs to be discussed. And the only other one I would suggest that you think about, it's not in the top 7 list, but the strengthen the inclusionary affordable housing ordinance. That was something that came out at both the ad hoc zoning and the housing ad hoc, that making some changes to that is important. It goes towards some of the affordable housing issue. Where you put that in your list of priorities, it's a bigger issue. And I think, Jim, you had an RFP at some point to do a look into, I don't know where that process stands, but I would just suggest that's something that you might want to take a look at after you take care of the first 2 or 3. Maybe you move that back up onto the list. But other than that, those are the comments I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So we've heard from everybody up here. I didn't make my comments, but I pretty much agree with what was said here. I have no problem with focusing on the first 3. If we want to have a discussion based on what we've heard from the public, what we've all heard from one another, we can do that. I don't want to do anything, certainly to Steve's point, without a public hearing here in this room. That's what we're here to do. Is President Tamish was here. He called it the sausage making. He wants to get that out of the town council and down here. And that hearing that you had, Steve, for numbers 1 and 2, I think is must-see TV for anyone who wants to have their finger on the pulse of the town of Barnstable. There was some very passionate comment. It really brought out some good comments. So I would be comfortable. I'd just like to hear what it is not. Will, you wanted to kind of look at all of them. I think some of our commenters kind of dove down in there on how we might want to. Do we want to talk about how we might? I think we have consensus that 1 and 2 we're going to tackle. They're very complicated. They're thorny, and they need a lot of review. Chris Clark mentioned background, too. There's a lot of background here. I think several people have brought up, what is the problem? We need to understand what the problem is. So I think maybe Jim, and anybody jump in here. I would like Jim, Charlie's going to jump in, but I would propose that we let Jim talk us through how we might start getting the information we need to make intelligent decisions, data-driven, engineering-driven, problem-driven public hearings, and move out smartly on 1 and 2, and then maybe we can have a discussion about the other ones.
Absolutely. So, yes, all great discussions. I think you guys are really moving in a smart direction. For 1 and 2, since there is some early draft work product, that is extremely helpful. What I would recommend is we could begin, if the committee agrees, we could assign these first 1 or both to the next meeting, where we would then send out outreach notices. We could, as Steve mentioned, maybe try and find as many email correspondence that we've received and respond back that this subcommittee is now picking this up. For the committee, I could certainly provide all the links of the hearings so that you guys have a sense of what the dialogue has been to date. And then my recommendation, honestly, would be to confirm that our building commissioner is available, because he's best to talk about the existing conditions, the complaints that he receives on a day-to-day basis on these items, and walk us through those so that we can begin to look at the draft, see how we can better that draft, and move in that direction. So that would be my suggestion for those 2 items. For number 3, we can certainly begin to work on a product, looking at obviously best practices, looking at zoning board's concerns, maybe even sitting down with the zoning board or inviting Jake. Maybe Jake invites a couple members of the board, not a quorum, but a couple members of the board to this group to discuss their concerns. And we can begin to work on a draft product that is, as we're working on that, you guys can be talking about 1 and 2 so that we're ready to go on number 3 as you guys are getting closer to a conclusion on 1 and 2. If that seems amenable to you guys, I think that would be our best approach.
I think that's good. I'd also, just because it's been so fresh at the council, you know, the amendments that went through the planning board came back to us, were done by Bob Schulte. I think he makes a wise point that we've got a piece of the downtown zoning that we haven't quite defined as well as we have the other pieces. I don't know if the people here agree that that might be an easier lift for Jim to bring forward. Again, we will require a public hearing for this. We're not going to just do it ourselves and send it. And from what I understand, to the point of Will's point, everything goes to the town council and then to the planning board and then back. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. None of this circumvents Mass General law. So any public engagement that you do here is a bonus because once the final product leaves here as a recommendation, it goes to our council leadership, which is the president and vice president. They'll determine whether or not it gets on an agenda. You can certainly maybe make an ask, depending on how weighty the subject is. You may want to ask for a workshop where this group will come and discuss with the full council about why this work product has come to you and why it's in this final form. And then the council would then accept that, put it on an agenda for a first read. It would go to the planning board. It's required to go to the planning board per Mass General law. The council is probably tired of me with that presentation showing you that. And so it goes to the planning board. They will then hold a public hearing. No matter how many public hearings we do down, or public meetings we do down here, the planning board will hold a public hearing, and then it will go to the town council for a public hearing. But as you guys all mentioned, hopefully, if there's a lot of public engagement in the onset, there, the product will be in a more refined form once it gets to planning board and council.
Any comments from anyone? Steve?
I just have a couple things. I mean, first of all, I do agree with comments that were made about number 5, because number 5 is so current. You know, you guys have done great work on it. I think the planning board did great work on it. And because it's so active, staff has a lot of materials at the ready. So that may be a great one to dig into. Just another quick couple things. Jim, timelines. Is there any sort, are we held to any sort of standard with timelines, meaning when we open a public hearing, how long we have to close it, or when it's closed, how long we have to make a recommendation, or does that not apply?
That's a great question. So, yeah, a clarification here. None of these are public hearings. This is a subcommittee that's advising the council. So at all public meetings, you guys can engage the public, invite them to comment, but none of these are statute as a public hearing. So no, there's no timelines that are mandated. And so, you guys can take technically as much time as you need to work through the items.
That's good. That's great. Yeah. And then the second thing I just wanted to hit on is, well, first of all, I do agree with starting with 1 and 2. I think that kind of starting with those 2 is probably a full meeting, to be honest, and then possibly think about having number 5 on deck to kind of get into next. And then my last thing is I just want to touch on short-term rentals. I was on the planning board when we had our first whack at that. It's a wide-ranging topic, and it may be beneficial for us to identify a narrow focus, a specific objective. Let's try and get through this one objective first and then go on to the next, rather than trying to bite it all off at once. I think one thing that you constantly hear is, let's get corporate-owned short-term rentals banned in town. And that's something that I think a lot of people would agree that might be a good objective to just start with. Hilda mentioned so many other groups talking about it, working on it. Those are the stakeholders that we got to get in this room. Those are the stakeholders we've got to invite here, hear about what they're seeing for their problems and what they've been working on. And then the last thing I'll mention is I think we've got to hear from the town attorney about conflict of interest, because that's what we ran into last time. Members of the planning board had to recuse. Many members of town council had to recuse, because really anybody in your family that owns an Airbnb, you're out, So I think we just have to hear from the town attorney before we get into that to figure out, is there going to be any of us left standing? You know what I mean? So anyways, I just wanted to put that out there because we could run into quorum issues with that. That's it.
Okay, I think we're kind of at a point where maybe, I don't know if we're going to vote on something. I think perhaps we are. Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you very much. A couple of things. If one of these recommendations matures and goes to the town council, looks like all of these recommendations will require a 2/3 vote. Is that correct?
Well,
Changes
it
to zoning?
depends on what the final form is, but yes, if it's zoning and there is a housing choice variable in Mass General Law that if it's specifically for increasing housing production, that's actually a 50% or a majority vote, 51%. But by and large, yes, you're right. Very likely these would be 2/3 vote, but again, it's going to ultimately be determined by its final form. And what I mean by that is it could be a general ordinance as well, potentially.
I see. And if it is a zoning amendment that we're voting on, if it fails, then you leave it alone for 2 years, is that?
Well, again, that depends. So many of these would likely be born from this committee. So going to the town council, it's really a town council item. So if it goes to town council, you certainly could withdraw it at that time if you sit there and go, this isn't right yet, let's send it back. But if it goes to the planning board says we don't recommend it, and then it goes to town council and you guys voted and it goes down, yes, there would be a 2-year cooling period for that. But we could certainly have discussions as we proceed through that process. And that goes with this group too. If you guys are working on a subject matter and you say, you know what, we've heard from the public, we've heard from staff, and we don't believe it's an issue, then you could certainly say, you know what, we're putting this to the side. We're not working on this at this time because it might not be an issue. So that's certainly something to consider down the line as well. But I think you guys have enough already locked and loaded that that's probably not going to be an issue for some time.
Thank you. One more thing, if I could suggest that given, say, agenda item or priority item number 3, the review of all town zoning districts related to signage regulations, and that it was recommended that we address this through the ZBA. Perhaps I can ask the chair of the ZBA, Jake, if you don't mind considering this, then maybe put this on your agenda and send this group some bullet points from the rest of your committee. So you say, hey, these are the things that have been, we keep bumping our head up on, or something like that. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely work on it a little bit, but I would defer to Jim too. I mean, Jim's seen what we've struggled with and where we where things repetitively come back to us. And I think just the code is just outdated. So I would defer to Jim, but happy to also bring it back to the ZBA, as a discussion item at the end of one of our meetings.
Thank you.
Just a couple of quick things that are on a side, so to speak. I like the idea, Jim, what you brought up about having, if you'll pardon the baseball alliterations, have a couple of these things in the batter's box and something on the on-deck circle. I think that's a great idea. That keeps it moving along, and there's no breaks in terms of what our workload will be, and that we can keep it at a good pace. And one other thing, Madam Chair, I would say, I would hope and I would suggest that that you, as the chair of this subcommittee, makes regular reports to the full council on what we're doing. Again, back to my original point of staying relevant.
Chair Ledke, can I just make a comment following up on that? So yeah, I agree. I think, Jim, give us your sort of workload ability, but I think it sounds like we sort of are going to actively work on 1 and 2, and whereas 3 potentially could be worked on by Jim's staff to sort of create something. And then I think there's also, if Jim, you're looking for direction from this committee, some of the additional, not numbered items that are more kind of like administrative cleanups, that maybe we give direction for someone in your staff to sort of start working on those edits that are less, are less sort of tangible and they're more administrative. Like the one just like updating some of our our uses in town and maybe making a use table that's been asked for in the past quite a bit. So I don't know if some of those that are sort of less we don't have to get as involved with doing research and bring the public in. If we could have some of those sort of going on in the background, and then we can check them off sort of efficiently and quickly when they come forward.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great idea. I think, yeah, some of these honestly are going to be more work for this committee than our staff. So we could certainly be working on some of those things to be ready for if there's a gap, for instance, in 1 month we're still working on, I don't know, short-term rentals, and we're not ready to go for a discussion. We could have something that's more administrative ready to go for discussion. We could certainly think about how we can best achieve that. What I do see here, though, 1 and 2, we have some work products that we can be ready to provide you with a number of other substantive items to assist you in helping through those drafts. I did hear, if the downtown Hyannis ones, if they are something that this committee wants to pick up before we put down, because we are just wrapping that up now, we could have something ready for you for April if that's the one you wanted to just go ahead and get done, and then we could come back in May for 1 and 2, and all the while we could be working on 3 as a staff, because that's going to take a little bit more time, if that's something you wish to do.
I think, Charlie, you had something to say?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Excuse me for regurgitating the obvious, but I need to be in the spirit of what Craig, with what Greg, Chris Gregory, yeah, I'm sorry, Chris Gregory, and seconded by Steve. I want to make sure that I know, what the problem is, and so I'm looking at 1 and 2. Both of them say something similar, and it's sort of leading the priority. This priority was identified by the town council with an objective to implement restrictions related to the parking of commercial vehicles in residential neighborhoods. And then on 2, this priority was identified by the town council with an objective of limiting commercial activity in residential neighborhoods. So I want the public to understand, unless I'm wrong about this, that the problem must have been somewhere along the line of, as we probably have all know, too many commercial vehicles in residential neighborhoods and too much commercial activity in residential neighborhoods. So our objective is, as is stated here, is to implement restrictions. Is that what everybody's notion is on this?
I would say that's somewhat accurate, yes. I can speak for my own precinct. I have been in some of our residents' living rooms who practically describe that they're being driven insane by the commercial work on their street coming from houses that they expected to be residential. So, yes, this needs to be looked at least from my perspective. I could tell you of any number of complaints throughout my precinct where this is really interrupting with people's ability to enjoy their residential experience. Yeah, I think it's an issue, and I think you've said it correctly. I think they're looking for some sort of, if you want to call it restriction, regulation, something that gives them some relief other than just going, one-on-one with their neighbors, which has led to some unpleasant situations, Charlie.
Madam Chair? Yeah, and Charlie, to your point, the only thing I would add is I need to know the origin story. I need to know where this came from. Was this only in certain areas of the town? Is this only 25 or less bad actors? Do we need to redo everything in the town? I need to know where it came from. I need to know the origin story. Those are all the questions I have, and that will help guide us.
How can we find that origin story? What do we do to get that?
Well, that's the homework we've got to assign staff, and I think it was you or somebody else that mentioned potentially having the assistant town manager in to talk about his experience, the quality of life group experience, but we've got to start at the beginning. It's the only place to start is at the beginning.
So the origin story would be a good place to start.
I think so, and I think that would be a presentation from staff, but we've got to involve everybody that was involved from the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, Jim, this was a staff, it was, Chris mentioned, Andy Clyburn, Assistant Town Manager, led this group. This was a staff-produced product.
Yeah, and well, it was a staff-produced product based on resident complaints to counselors, and counselors mandated this be drafted by staff. And so staff put it together, and we worked on things like understanding where the complaints are coming from, who's complaining, how many complaints. And so my recommendation, again, for these two, commercial vehicle and home occ, is the first meeting that you would take on these items, we would have our building commissioner in to go over all the complaints that have been received, maybe our police chief if necessary, our assistant town manager if necessary, et cetera, and just try and give you an understanding of what we were looking at in the early stages so that you can have an understanding. And again, you know, I think these are two issues that need to be tackled, but, you know, to what degree? I think that's the question. Right now you have a draft that's kind of, especially for commercial vehicle, uniform across town. I think you'll hear, if you watch the planning board hearings, you know, it might not be as simple as that, and maybe we need to look at regulations that act a little bit different for downtown or Hyannis versus, say, West Barnstable, you know, larger lots, more buffer, et cetera. So maybe it's not the same issue, and so we need to maybe approach it a little bit different, and that's where this committee will come in.
John?
Thanks, Chairman. I think the origin story comes every day. It depends on a new person going into business and growing that business to a point where it's no longer a home occupation. And the home occupation ordinances that I see, that it has, everything's got to be within the home. Nothing can be outside. And what happens is that once they get past a certain point, they start putting equipment, growing with buying new equipment and that kind of thing, and then it becomes a problem. And it's the way I look at it, it's a cost of doing business. That we have ordinances that say you cannot do this right now. You cannot put extra equipment outside of your home, and at some point your business grows to a point where you need a commercial space. And I think that's what happens on a daily basis. And that choke point is where it gets to be such a problem next to somebody who's living there that they're at their end of the rope, and they're really not allowed to do that in the first place as far as I know the ordinance for a home occupation. So I've been to some of your meetings, and I've seen some of the guys come out in the contracts. I understand we don't have a lot of places that are commercial spots that are affordable, but I see that as a cost of doing business. When your business grows to a point where you're no longer kept within those four walls, that you start putting your equipment outside, that's a time that you have to go get a commercial space. And I think one thing we can probably hopefully do is we ask people to build buildings around here. There's a spot you should put this. We should probably start looking for property that allows worker bays and that kind of stuff, whether it be at the industrial park or whatever, but maybe we can do that as a town to encourage a developer to do so, because that is what is needed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. I think that's the kind of thing that'll come out as we look at the origins of this and get to the root of the problem. So do we want to put together a motion to give Jim some formal guidance on what we've discussed? I can try to do it, and then please correct me, and thank you for correcting me when I inappropriately used the term public hearing. I meant robust public comment. I liked Steve's point. Let's please go back. Let's find these people that commented before and tell them there's a relook going on so we can get those same people back. So the motion I would be is to have the Director of Planning look at items 1 and 2 as on the memo of Thursday, March 19th, 2026. That is number 1, the town's commercial vehicle ordinance, number 2, the home occupation ordinance, and 3, review the town's zoning district related to signage regulations. And then I'm going to add another one, which is the number 5, explore amendments to the downtown Hyannis zoning districts. And I don't know how much complicated we've had some discussion of what comes back first. That, there's a lot of work on each, and, Will, I like the baseball analogy that number 5 would be on deck, and numbers 1 and 2 are certainly going to take a lot of work. So number 5 could slip in there while we have an opportunity. So that's a convoluted motion. Do I need to, so I'm saying 1, 2, 3, and 5. Is everyone okay with voting that Jim will work 1, 2, 3, and 5, and he will work them appropriately so that we don't have any dead time, that we keep moving out smartly as we have opportunities?
May I just ask one question? For 1 and 2, that might be reliant on availability of some of the staff, like the inspectors, et cetera. Is it okay if there's flexibility? If they're not available for the very next meeting, I'll have prepared downtown Hyannis items to come in if I need to move commercial vehicle and home occ to the subsequent meeting. I can come in with downtown Hyannis.
That's
material.
Exactly what I was trying to
That's
say
great.
in a very
Okay.
inarticulate way was,
Perfect.
let's take, if we have consensus, 1, 2, 3, and 5, and let's defer to Jim to work these simultaneously and come forward with what we've all agreed that we're going to move things out here and keep things going. So we'll defer to you, Jim, that you're going to work each appropriately, and we'll always have something to do at this. We will not sit here and come and...
Madam Chair, if you're voting on this as a committee, it needs to be a roll call vote because we have a member on Zoom.
Okay.
Do we need a vote? Or does Jim understand that?
I think a vote would be great.
I think we should do a vote, that we are asking Jim Kupfer, Director of Planning, to prepare items 1. Go ahead, John.
I just had a comment. It seems that we're pushing aside number 4. Steve, I heard what your comments were on that, and that was go to the town lawyer and decide. Can you explain what that person would do for this? Why the town lawyer? Why not, isn't just a regular item that we go through?
Well, I think that we all, any member needs to look at a potential conflict of interest. And of course, we could do that without going to the town attorney. I know on some of these in the past, the town attorney has offered us guidance, which has been helpful for me. So that was just an idea, just a thought.
Yeah. We'd have to decide how many people have conflicts of interest here that would keep us from doing the job. But that's one of the things that a number of us ran on. I know there's at least 3 or 4. And I find that sometimes the town attorney will kibosh a lot of stuff for, well, I just, this has been something that's been open sore for 15 years now.
Well, let me clarify. I only seek guidance from the town attorney. the decision to recuse or not recuse ultimately would fall to each of us.
Oh, of course, yeah, of course. And
Yeah.
what you're saying is that you think maybe if we still have a quorum after that,
Right.
okay? And can we take like a straw poll and ask how many people sitting here have a reason to recuse, a conflict? Is that something?
Yeah, do we
can
want to finish up on this first piece?
I'm fine with that.
And then we'll do that.
I'm fine with that.
Absolutely, that's fine,
Thank you.
John. But let's do then a roll call vote that we're asking Jim Cupfer, Director Planning, to work items 1, 2, 3, and 5 on the memo he provided to us dated March 19th, 2026.
And I'll second that.
Committee members, Councilor Crocker,
Yes.
Councilor Clark,
Yes.
Councilor Bloom,
Yes.
Councilor Lutke,
Yes.
Councilor Crowe,
Yes.
Committee Member Jake Dewey,
Yes.
Committee Member Steve Robichaud.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Okay, thank you. Now, why don't we do a straw poll? That worked very well at the town council. I think it was Will Crocker that recommended that. Do people mind in this public forum thinking that they might have to consult in some way or perhaps consider recusing because they or family members are involved in short-term rentals? Let's just go around. Let's start with Charlie.
No.
Okay. Will?
I do not have a problem with number 4, but as I said earlier this evening, I may have a problem with number 2.
Okay, thank you for that. Chris?
No conflict.
I have no conflict.
I have no conflict.
Well, it's just me, so
Me,
I
I
do-
would probably
Well,
have
we
a
have
conflict.
Jake
I would
as well.
consult the
We haven't
attorney
heard-
of the day, but I would have a conflict most likely.
Okay. And I just need to brush up on my rules. I had a sibling that did an Airbnb and has not done it in quite some time, but I have to look at what the duration is for having it in the rearview mirror. So I've just got to look at those rules and be sure that I'm clear.
Okay, that leaves the 5 of us standing, and that's enough, I believe, to vote on these issues, should that come before us.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you, John.
Thank you.
Understood.
Okay, I think our next item is our approving of the minutes of February 18th, 2026.
So moved.
Second?
Committee members, Councilor Crocker,
Yes.
Councilor Clark.
Yes.
Councilor Bloom,
Yes.
Councilor Lutke,
Yes.
Councilor Crowe,
Yes.
Committee Member Jake Dewey,
Yes.
Committee Member Steve Robichaud.
Yes.
It's unanimous, and I'll get them posted.
Okay, we have another meeting scheduled, and that is going to be April 23rd, 2026. And we will wait to see the agenda. I'd ask everybody on this committee, because it is such a heavy lift, please review all the materials. What we're looking at, there's a lot of material out there. If you haven't watched that planning board meeting, I'd ask you to watch it so you can get a sense of some of the public comments on that. Be very helpful. So with that, I would take a motion to
Move to adjourn.
Committee members, Councilor Crocker,
Yes.
Councilor Clark.
Yes.
Councilor Bloom.
Yes.
Councilor Lutke,
Yes.
Councilor Crowe,
Yes.
Committee Member Jake Dewey,
Yes.
Committee Member Steve Robichaud.
Yes.
You are adjourned at 6:56 PM.